Do you ever feel like you're carrying around a heavy stone in your chest? A weight that doesn't come from a bad thing, but just a part of living. A hurt you didn't do anything wrong to get. So let me tell you about Stillwater Keep. You reach it at the end of a long, slow river. Calm enough to look like glass sometimes, reflecting the moonlight like a second sky. He isn't taking orders, doesn't travel anymore, just melts down bits of copper and tin and adds just the right touch of silver and a whisper of something else, something he won't name. He says the bells speak only when they're ready. It's curved delicate like the petal of a snowdrop. He had cast it just days before, but tonight it shimmered faintly in the firelight as if it were ready, as if it had found its memory. He whispered to it, not in words, but in breath, soft and slow like wind through reeds. And then he climbed the spiral steps of the keep, his footsteps echoing gently on the old stone, each one slower than the last until he reached the open tower where the air was cool and still. From here he could see all of Stillwater, candles flickering in windows, a cat slipping across a garden wall, mothers tucking children into bed. He waited until the sky deepened to velvet, until even the birds had gone quiet, and then with both hands wrapped around the rope, he rang the bell just once. The sound flowed like water down the hill, sweet and pure, threading through the air with the gentleness of falling snow. It passed over sleeping chickens in their coops. It brushed the fur of a curled-up dog in the blacksmith's yard. It drifted into the dreams of a girl who had cried that day and the farmer who missed his father's voice. It reached the heart it was meant for and held it gently. In the warmth of his tower, Alder stood still. He closed his eyes and listened, not for applause, not for thanks, but for silence. The kind of silence that comes when a burden is lifted, when sorrow has softened, just enough to let in light. He smiled, a small private smile, and descended the stairs like a ghost, returning to the hush of his forge where another bell waited, half formed in the glow of the embers. The forge had dinned to coals by the time Alder returned, but the room was still warm with a hush like a lullaby and the scent of iron, lavender oil, and old oak beams. He sat beside the hearth, no rush, no reason to move quickly. Everything in his world moved at the pace of breath, of memory, of dreams. The newest bell, not yet born, sat in its mold. He touched the cooling metal with reverence, like placing a hand on an old friend's shoulder. This one would wait for tomorrow. Tonight was for stillness. Outside, a soft mist rolled in from the river. It kissed the windows of the keep, beaded like dew along the ivy vines, and curled around the stones like a woolen shawl. The villagers had heard the bell, and now one by one they slept. And if you looked closely, if you walked the lanes and listened gently, you might hear something curious, a softness in the silence, a feeling that something had just let go, like a sigh, like forgiveness. Sometimes children asked where the bells went after they rang. Their parents would smile and say, they float up and rest on the clouds where they keep watch over dreams. Others said they sank into the earth and became roots for the oldest trees. Alder never answered. He simply smiled and kept ringing just once each night. And in the stillness that followed, people dreamed of lanterns bobbing on slow rivers of meadows, dusted with stars, of loved ones long past who whispered to them with kindness in their eyes. All from one small sound, forged by one quiet man in a tower of stone on a hill called Stillwater. When the fire glows like the sun behind a veil, when the air shimmers with heat, but the forge never roars. It just hums softly, steady. Alder begins each bell with a prayer, not to any god, but to memory itself. He hums as he works, old melodies no one else remembers, tunes passed down by his grandmother, who believed metal could hold emotions, not just echo them, but hold them, craft them into something enduring. And so he hums and shapes until the bell takes form, slow and sacred as the moon's rising. Tucked into the hills beside is the village of Stillwater. And inside, Alder keeps ringing his bells, just once a day, each one different. yet all the same, holding the same quiet magic. And when they chime, when they sing, when they speak, the villagers listen. They gather near their radios, hold their loved ones' hands a little tighter, remember names and faces a little clearer. When you live with grief or fear, sometimes you need a bell to remind you of the other sounds in life, the ones that bring you peace. Its houses lean close together, thatched roofs dusted with chimney smoke, twisting paths winding between gardens overgrown with ivy. But what I didn't say is that he's really the keeper of the bell tower. See, there are hundreds of bells up there, maybe thousands, and each one is tuned to someone's heart, not just anyone, but a soul that has wandered too far from peace. Maybe a widow who has forgotten her laugh, or a child who fears the dark, or an old man whose dreams have faded to gray. Alder listens in the way bell makers know how, not with ears, but with presence, with stillness. And when the time is right, he crafts a bell for them, small enough to carry in one hand, but full of weightless, quiet magic. He rings it just once and never tells. There's plenty of places to stop and hide on the road to Stillwater Keep. Secret clearings where the river bends or under bridges, low and moss-covered, arching over the still water flow. But everyone eventually reaches it because that's where the bell rings. Once a day, right before bed, sounding from the top of the hill. Not a sound you hear by day. Not a sound rung by a priest or monk in the chapel. Not a sound anyone knows why. They just know it will ring when the sky is dark. And it comes again, just once, and it's not loud, more like a chime than a ring. It travels down the hill over thatched roofs, through shuttered windows open to the night breeze, into dreaming heads resting on pillows. And every time it chimes, the villagers smile softly in their beds because they say that bell holds. Memories, not any memories, but good ones, kind ones, ones that belong to someone, somewhere, and are kept safe in the sound. What if I told you there's a place where those stones are turned into bells? Not bronze bells that clamor loudly, but tiny bells that fit in the palm of your hand. Bells that ring not to rouse you, but to lull you into remembering. This story starts with a place, not a character. It's been like this for as long as anyone alive can remember. Nobody knows why, nobody knows how, but every night that bell chimes. And the next morning, when sunlight paints the dew-kissed grass with gold, everyone feels a little bit lighter. The bellmaker's name is Alder, tall and gentle with silver in his beard and hands shaped by decades of hard work. Long fingers, calloused palms, and a touch of soot beneath his nails. He's been coming to Stillwater for years, though some say forever. If you find his house, which isn't hard since it is the only one in the old stone keep at the top of the hill, you won't find a clock on the wall. No tick or talk, only the rhythm of the river below and the gentle breathing of the forge. Inside, stone walls wrapped in ivy, a single hearth glowing with soft amber light. There are no clocks here, no tick, no talk. Only the rhythm of the river below and the gentle breathing of the forge. Every day, Alder does the same thing. Slowly, carefully, he shapes metal, coaxing and pulling, hammering and singing. Outside, seasons drift by, leaves turn and fall. Snow gathers and melts. The river flows, always flowing. I mentioned that Alder lives in the old stone keep, which is true. One evening, as dusk crept over Stillwater, Alder stood in his workshop with a nearly finished bell cradled in his hands. It was smaller than most,